Imagine a land where the very food that sustains its people becomes the harbinger of their doom. This isn't a dystopian tale, but the tragic history of Ireland during the potato famine. Greetings everyone. In today's video, we'll delve into the Irish potato famine of the 19th century. A catastrophe that wasn't just a result of nature's wrath, but also of political exploitation. We'll explore how this disaster reshaped Ireland, influenced global migration, and left an indelible mark on world history. If you find this video interesting, please support us by hitting the like button. Now, let's get started. Throughout human history, numerous severe famines have threatened and endangered lives. Beginning in 1845, Ireland experienced one of the worst famines in history. The emergence of the potato blight wreaked havoc on Ireland. Ireland had been under English control for centuries, but it was formally incorporated into the UK in 1801. At that time, potato production was very active in Ireland. The climate of Ireland was suitable for potato production, and even though the land was small, potatoes were popular among the common people, because they could be harvested in large quantities and were an indispensable staple food crop. For the poor especially, the potato was undeniably a food lifeline, crucial to Ireland's population growth. In 1845, a calamity struck the Irish potato. An epidemic, later known as the potato blight, caused a sharp decline in the potato crop. Having experienced crop failures in the past, many initially believed this potato crop failure was a temporary setback caused by a humid summer. However, as potato crop failures spread across Europe, it became clear that this wasn't merely a fleeting climatic event but signaled a deeper crisis. Their fears were confirmed when, by the following year, 1846, the potato crop remained poor, with yields showing no signs of recovery. Thus began the Irish people's long and severe struggle against hunger. We would think that in such a crisis situation, the government would usually do something about it. So what was the British response to the famine? Unfortunately, we have to say that the British response was curiously slow to react to the many lives that were being lost one after another. The first action taken by such a government to save the suffering colonists was anything but reliable. When Ireland's problems became too great to ignore, Prime Minister Robert Peel began to take action. The government first tried to import corn from the US to replace potatoes as a food source. However, at the time, Britain had laws known as the Corn Laws that severely restricted grain imports and kept the price of its own grain high. So, of course, sufficient food could not be imported without repealing this law. But on the other hand, this law was beneficial to the mainland of Great Britain. Therefore, the idea of repealing the Grain Act just for Ireland was not easily realized. Prime Minister Peel also initiated public works projects to provide employment for the poor. But these jobs didn't immediately address the immediate hunger crisis. These measures had little immediate effect, and the situation of the starving Irish people did not improve at all. This naturally raises a question. Although the production of potatoes was very active in Ireland, did they grow any other crops at all? As I mentioned at the beginning, the crop failure was due to a plague specific to the potato. Why not then grow something other than potatoes, before going through the hassle of importing food from other countries or giving them different labor? The answer is indeed surprising. To our surprise, Ireland already had an abundance of crops other than potatoes. Ireland had a robust production of corn and other grains, meat, dairy products, and a variety of other foods. Nevertheless, the Irish people were starving to the extreme. Why was this absurdity happening? Many crops, other than potatoes, were forcibly exported to England. The Irish people were compelled to produce crops that they would never consume. British landowners essentially dictated their lives. It's a very frustrating, infuriating situation. If there really was no food at all, it would be hard. But it might be possible to give up. But to have the food that you have worked so hard to produce taken away from you because you can't eat it, it seems so frustrating and unreasonable. Herein lies the fundamental problem of the Irish potato famine. The natural disaster of the potato blight was not the only factor that made the famine so severe. The exploitation of Ireland by the British as a colony was also a major cause. The wealth of Ireland was being extracted without effective solutions to the famine. And the poor and afflicted could no longer afford to pay rent to their landlords. And the landlords would not let these people live on their land in silence. They wanted to evict those who could not pay rent and turn them into farms, where they could raise livestock and grow crops that could be sold at a high price. Some landowners devised a plan to evict the Irish tenants, encouraging them to emigrate to the United States. The landowners offered to pay for the trip, and half-heartedly forced the impoverished people onto ships bound for the United States. For many, the prospect of a new land, jobs, and food may have seemed like their only hope. Some people decided to go on their own. The journey, however, was a tough one. At the time, the journey from Ireland to the U.S. took 4 to 6 weeks. During this time, the poor passengers spent most of their time in their cabins, without ever going on deck. The overcrowded cabins became breeding grounds for infectious diseases like dysentery and typhus, leading to many deaths during the voyage. Even those who were lucky enough to make it to the U.S. were abandoned in the harbor and many died on the streets. Despite this grim fate, the landowners who guided the boats were not evacuated. Those who journeyed on the so-called coffin boats, named for their high mortality rates, never saw Ireland again. The famine persisted for many years, and while the British government made some efforts, their policies largely remained inadequate. Although the potato crop, the initial cause of the famine, gradually recovered. But this was not enough to end the famine. So how, in the end, did the long and painful potato famine come to an end? The British persisted with their policy of extracting Ireland's wealth, and the potato crop showed no significant recovery. The dramatic decline in the Irish population ultimately brought the potato famine to a halt. In 1841, before the famine began, Ireland had a population of about 8 million. 10 years later, it had dropped to 6.5 million. And by the end of the 19th century, with about 1.5 million deaths and 2 million emigrants, Ireland's population had dropped to 4.5 million. With the population reduced to nearly half, ironically, the supply of food for those who remained was stabilized. However, although the country was finally freed from the grip of hunger, the regret that so many people had to die or abandon their homeland is immeasurable. Along with the disappearance of so many people from Ireland, it also made it difficult to carry on the Irish language and traditions. The potato famine transcends a mere natural disaster narrative. It's a poignant chapter in Ireland's history, forever etched in memory. While there was food in Ireland, its improper distribution led to countless unnecessary deaths. Some view this as a deliberate disaster, masterminded by the British government, tantamount to a massacre. This debate has not yet been settled. However, in 1997, British Prime Minister Tony Blair, during his visit to Ireland, read out a letter of apology, acknowledging the responsibility of the British government during the time of the famine. In the letter, Blair acknowledged, the famine was an important event in Irish and British history, leaving a deep mark. The anguish of reflecting on the deaths of 1 million people in Ireland, which was then under the domain of the world's richest and most powerful country, remains profound. After expressing his sorrow, the Prime Minister's letter continues. The leaders of London at the time failed their own people, the people of Ireland. The letter was welcomed by Irish Prime Minister John Bruton. And what then happened to the Irish who left their homeland as immigrants? Those who survived the coffin ships and made it to America were not immediately happy in their new land. In 1853, a staggering 43% of all immigrants to the U.S. were Irish. Their primary challenge upon arrival was religious discrimination. While most Americans were Protestant, most Irish were Catholic. And the immigrants were discriminated against both legally and economically. Many job advertisements in the U.S. at the time explicitly stated, "Irish need not apply." It took several decades for such repugnant feelings toward Irish immigrants to be overcome. However, they eventually became integrated into all aspects of American life, including a string of prominent figures with Irish ancestry, such as John F. Kennedy, who became the 35th President of the United States in 1961, and Michael Jordan, the world-famous basketball player. Today, the U.S. has wholeheartedly embraced cultural contributions from Irish immigrants, such as Irish whiskey and music, integrating them into its rich cultural tapestry. While the Irish potato famine remains a tragic chapter in history, its ripple effects have influenced cultures far and wide, contributing to the rich diversity we see today. In Ireland, the unity and resistance led by the Young Irelanders continued to gain momentum. That fight finally led to Irish independence in 1922. Moreover, the population, which dwindled to 4.5 million due to the potato famine, has seen a gradual recovery over the subsequent 170 years, projected to surpass 5 million in 2022. Today, with its thriving economy and robust agriculture, Ireland stands as a prosperous nation, frequently ranked among the world's best places to live. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more insightful content. Take care and see you in the next video. Goodbye.